Hello, I am the Story Girl, and welcome to the story of Puss in Boots. Once there was a miller who, very sad to say, died. As millers do, and other people too. The miller died, leaving a mill, a donkey, a cat, and 3 sons. And since all he had to his name was a mill, a donkey, and a cat, he gave one of each to his sons. The eldest son got the mill, the middle son got the donkey, and the youngest son got the cat. Of course, all of the sons were very appreciative of what they had gotten, but the 2 elder sons immediately said to each other, "Wouldn't it be a fine thing if we went into business together? I'll use the mill to mill all the flour, and you can carry it into town in your donkey. We can split the profits 50-50. Of course, there was no room in this great plan for the youngest son and his cat, and so he picked up his cat, said farewell to his brothers, and went off to seek his fortune in the world with just himself and a cat. Just so you know, another word for cat is Puss. As he walked along the road, he felt rather disheartened, and so he started to talk to the cat. "Ah, Puss," he said, "nothing in the world to my name but you, and your usefulness will be gone by the time I've made you into a sausage and a fur hat. Well, I guess I might as well get on with it. Please, master." "I must be dreaming," said the miller's youngest son. "Pretty sure that was the cat that spoke just now. Of course, I was talking to the cat." "Yes, master. You were talking to me, and I talked back. Even though if any of my kindred saw me talking to you, they would think I was a very foolish puss indeed." "You can talk," said the miller's son. "That is beside the matter. You can get much more out of your life with a live cat than a dead one." "Please," said the miller's son, "I have just a cat. I have only a 3rd grade reading level, and I have no other skill sets to recommend me to an employer. You might keep me alive for 2 more days, where I can walk to a town and perhaps get some work. Master, I will get you all the food you need to live 100 years more. I just need 2 things from you." What? The miller's son was willing to listen to the cat's idea because he had noticed that the cat had always been a sly creature, able to catch many mice around the mill. So he listened. "What would those 2 things be, Puss?" "Oh, I just need a bag and a nice set of boots." "Boots," said the miller's son. "Yes, boots. What could a cat need boots for? They will make me look very dashing, don't you think?" The miller's son couldn't say no to that, and so he went and got the cat exactly what he had asked for, a bag and a set of boots. Well, the puss stepped into the boots with his hind legs and picked up the bag with his front legs, and he did cut a rather fine figure in his new boots. And the cat said, Master, I'm off. I'll see you this evening. And he walked away with his fine new boots and bag. Well, the cat spent the entire day hunting with his bag. You see, cats aren't only good at hunting mice. Cats have a fair way with rabbits. And this cat caught two large hares in his bag, which he slaughtered and brought along back to the miller's son. Oh, it's a fine day's hunting I see you've had, Puss. Oh, let me eat both of those rabbits. They'll make a fine meal. No, master, you shall have one. And he plucked out a rabbit and put it on his master's lap. The other shall go with me. I'll be back sometime tomorrow afternoon. And the cat trotted off all the way to the king's town, where the large castle rose over the busy streets. He walked right in through the gate of the city, since nobody had any reason to think that a cat might cause any mischief. They let him in. He walked all the way up to the king's throne room and announced that he was there as an ambassador with a gift for the king. It's not every day you receive a cat as an ambassador, so the king let him in. The cat strut into the throne room, as only cats can do, and said, "Your Majesty, I come from His Honor, the Marquis of Carabas, with this gift for you." And with a flourish, the cat opened his bag and drew out the hare. "A rabbit for your table tonight, dear king, with my master's compliments." The king chuckled a bit. This was a rather dramatic cat, but then again, cats are usually pretty dramatic. "Thank you very much, Lord Ambassador," said the king. "I say, I've never heard of the Marquis of Carabas. I should like to meet him. Could perhaps we arrange a meeting next week?" "I'm afraid not," said the cat, who was very quick thinking on his feet. "I'm afraid that my master, the Honourable Lord Marquis of Carabas, will be much too busy next week, as he has been hiring many servants to work his plentiful fields. But he may have time to slip you in next week after. I'll discuss it with him." "Thank you very much, Lord Cat." And with that, the cat clicked his boots and strutted, as only a cat can do, out of the throne room. Well, this went on for the whole next week. The puss would capture a rabbit or a pheasant, or perhaps a wild turkey, in his bag and sling it over his shoulder and strut into the king's courtroom and present it as a gift for the majesty of the land from the most honorable Lord Marquis of Carabas. It just so happens that while the cat was strutting about, he had his ears perked up and was listening in the corners of the court. And he just happened to know that the king would be taking a refreshing drive through the countryside with his beautiful daughter the next week. And he hatched a plan. On the very day of the carriage ride, the cat burst up to his master and said, "Master, master, you look a dreadful sight. You haven't bathed or changed your clothes in 2 weeks' time." "Puss, of course I haven't. I've been living out in the wild with you, eating better than I've ever eaten in my life, but where could there be occasion for me to take a bath or change my clothes?" "You must look presentable even in the wild, my master. You must go and bathe in the river." And so the puss led his master away to a very specific spot in the river. "Puss, this is right next to a bridge. I can't bathe right here. Somebody might see. I will keep lookout for you, master. No fear. And so the miller's son began to wash himself in the river, and the cunning Puss hid his clothes completely away, just as he happened to hear the sound of a very expensive carriage driving along, surrounded by an entourage of soldiers and ministers and people. "Help! Help! Help!" began to shout Puss in a very dramatic fashion. "Help! My master! My master has been set upon by thieves! Help!" Puss, what? "Quiet, master. Let me do my work." "Help!" Well, the sound of the horses riding came even faster and stopped right in front of the cat, who the king, who just happened to be one of the passengers of the carriage, noticed was the cat ambassador for his most honorable Lord Marquis of Carabas. "I say, Ambassador Cat, did you say your master is in trouble?" "Your Majesty!" flung the cat in front of the carriage. "My master, his horse, his armor, his clothes have all been stolen by thieves that roam this forest," and flung him into the river. "I barely got away with my own life. Oh, your Majesty, won't you have mercy upon him?" "Of course I will. That man has kept my larder stocked much better than I have my whole life. You there, guards, fetch the Marquis out of the river." Well, this whole time the miller's son had been ducked under the river in case anybody might see him bathing there. And the guards came with some clothing that just happened to be in the trunk of the carriage, and the miller's son was soon out of the river, dried off, and dressed in finer apparel than he had ever worn in his life. "I say, Marquis, you are such a favorable chap to me. Thank you for all the gifts, by the way. Would you like to join us for a ride through the countryside?" Your Majesty, I would be honored." The miller's son was still taking his cues from the cat, who he had no idea what was up to, but he jumped up into the carriage and sat down. The miller's son, that is. The miller's son jumped up into the carriage and sat down across from the king and the beautiful princess. Well, the beautiful princess had seen this man, handsome face, strong bearing, but once he sat down and started chatting with the king and the princess, her heart melted at his voice, his kind words, and the many times his eyes glanced her way. Well, while they were riding through the countryside, the cat bolted off down the path, running as fast as he could, running until he came to a very fine field of wheat with a lot of workers who were threshing the wheat, packing it up in bundles. "Who there, you workers?" said the cat as he strutted up to them, as only a cat can do. "Who do these fields belong to?" "Why, they belong to the ogre, of course, whose castle lies many miles to the south. We work day and night for him, for he has the frightening ability to be able to change his shape. He could be one of the mice hobbling along right now. You could even be him. We dare not disobey the ogre. He knows all." "Indeed he does. I've come from that ogre just now," said the Puss, "and he would like you to henceforth call him by the name of the Right Honorable Lord Marquis of Carabas." "Say it back." The right honourable, well, the Puss drilled them in it until they got it right, and then he rushed on further as fast as his paws and his boots could scamper until he got all the way to the next field, which was a beautiful field of barley. Ho there! You workers! You all work for the ogre? Yes, Sir Cat. Sir Cat in boots. Boots, cat boots. Never you mind. The ogre from henceforth will be called the Right Honourable Lord Marquis of Carabas. And then when those servants managed to memorize the name, it was a long name, the cat bounded off through the forest until he came to a large orchard full of apple trees. Ho there, servants! Yes, Sir Cat. Never you mind that. You work for the ogre? Yes, we do. The ogre from now on shall be called, and gave them the very same instructions. The cat went on from field to orchard. Well, it just so happens that while the cat was so busy, the king and the miller's son and the king's daughter had been riding through the patch of countryside and happened to see some workers laboring hard in a wheat field. Stop for a moment, cried out the king. You workers, this is a very fine wheat field. Who does it belong to? Why, the Right Honourable Lord Marquis of Carabas, said the servants, making very hard to use the name that they had been told by the cat. Ha 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 ha! What a wonderful field! You didn't say a thing, said to the king to the miller's son. Good work, all! On! And the carriage rode on until they came to all the other fields and orchards, and any time the king called out to the servants, they said the same thing. They said that this land belongs to the Right Honourable Lord Marquis of Carabas. And the king was becoming more and more impressed, and the miller's son and the king's daughter were finding each other more and more charming, so that when they arrived at the castle, the miller's son hopped out of the carriage and said, Welcome, your majesty, to my castle. Just so happens that the cat had arrived several hours before, as he had been running on his booted feet, until he had gotten to the castle, in which lived the ogre, the large brute of a beast, who ate on the flesh of whatever he pleased, who could change himself into any shape he desired. The cat whipped off his hat and stepped up to the door of the castle, even though he was a bold puss. He had never worked with an ogre before. He tapped at the door. Enter, said the voice of the ogre. The cat stepped into the great hall, looking around at all of the ogreish piles of bones that lay everywhere. The ogre sat at the head of the room in a very large throne. A cat. What would a cat want with me? Say it quick before I eat you for my supper, cat. A cat in boots. My lord ogre, the king, his majesty, has sent me. He is on his way. He is going to give you a new title to go by, a new title for your honored self, so that everybody will tremble at your name. This new name shall be the Right Honourable Lord Marquis of Carabas. That's a long name, but I'll take it, said the ogre. Tell me, Puss, do you find me frightening? most dreadfully terrifying, your Lord Right Honorable Carabas Marquis. That would be the Right Honorable Lord Marquis of Carabas to you, cat. Yes, yes, yes. I've heard some strange things, your lordship, your marquiship. I've heard that you can transform yourself. Heard that, have you? And the ogre changed shape into a large wild rhinoceros that stampeded towards the cat, who skidded away. Ow! Oh! And then turned back into the ogre. A fun little trick for parties and such, if I ever went to parties, which I don't. Oh, I've heard that your lordship, ogre, are able to transform yourself into even a much larger thing than a rhinoceros, even an elephant. Why, of course, said the ogre, and he transformed himself into an elephant and stamped his great feet on the floor, making the whole earth tremble. Well, the cat was trembling himself, but as the ogre turned back into himself, the cat didn't lose his wits. My lord ogre, you can transform yourself into such large things, but I've heard something even stranger, that you can transform yourself into something very small, into even a mouse. Easier done than said the ogre, and he transformed himself into the tiniest mouse, and the puss gobbled him up. So much for the ogre. The puss dusted off all of the dust in the castle and called out all the terrified servants to put on a fine feast and carry away all of the bones. And he opened the doors to welcome the Marquis of Carabas and the king. The miller's son, who now forevermore would be called the Marquis of Carabas, walked into his room, strutting as only a marquis can strut, showing it off to the king and his daughter, and the king married the miller's son, the marquis, to his daughter that very next week. And the puss lived to a ripe old age and didn't have to chase mice ever again. The end. I'm the story girl, though I have been called the girl in hats. The story of Puss in Boots is a story about a cat who is excellent at telling stories. And he took care of himself and his master very well with his stories. Have you ever told a story to get out of a hard situation? Tell me about it. Thank you for joining the story today. If you are new to my world of stories, I tell stories because I love stories. If you have a story that you love, that you're hoping that I would perform on the channel, go ahead and leave a comment below. I tell stories every single Tuesday. If you would like to join us every single Tuesday, that would be great. And if you would like to subscribe to my channel, that would also be great. If you want to join us on Facebook and Instagram, sometimes got some extra stories there and some hints and sneak peeks. Bye.